I didn't think much of the silence at first. Some couples grow into it, that quiet comfort of just existing near each other. No pressure to talk, no awkwardness in the pauses. I used to believe that's where Dana and I had landed. You know, the kind of silence you earn after years together, not because there's nothing to say, but because you've already said it all. But that night, the silence was different. It was soft. Too soft. Like the air was afraid to make noise around us. We were walking home down a side street that smelled faintly of old lilacs and damp concrete. Dana had just spent the evening at her friend Melinda's house, wine night, she said. A few girls catching up, laughing, maybe venting about husbands who leave dishes in the sink or forget to record The Bachelor. That kind of thing. She invited me to walk her home. Said she didn't want to Uber alone. I agreed. Of course, I always did. It's strange how your brain can confuse politeness with affection. I mistook her asking for company as a sign she still wanted mine. I remember how quiet her heels sounded against the pavement. She wasn't talking much, just scrolling through her phone while walking, something she rarely used to do when we were together. I was trying not to overthink it. Maybe she was tired. Maybe the wine was kicking in. Maybe she was texting Melinda a goodnight emoji. But then she stopped. Just like that, stopped mid-stride, holding the phone low, like she was trying to shield it from a glare that didn't exist. That's when I saw it. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize, Asher, do not answer, and beneath it, a preview of the message. I didn't read the whole thing. I didn't need to. Just 5 words blinked into my life and shattered the picture I thought was still whole. Still thinking about last Thursday. I don't remember breathing. I don't remember blinking. I just remember the jolt. The kind that hits right behind your ribcage, like your body is trying to protect your heart from what your eyes just confirmed. Dana didn't notice I saw. Or maybe she did, and just decided not to care. She locked her phone, slipped it into her coat pocket, and kept walking like nothing had happened. I followed, my legs moving on instinct, my mind screaming questions it didn't want answers to. I didn't say a word the rest of the way home. I couldn't. My throat was dry, my voice curled up somewhere deep inside me, afraid to be wrong, but more afraid to be right. Because the truth wasn't just written on that screen. It was written in her silence, her speed, the way she didn't reach for my hand, or look at me, or say she'd had a good time. I was walking beside a stranger who still had my last name. And that was the night I realized something horrible. Maybe the silence between us wasn't comfort. Maybe it was a warning. We got home without saying a single word. I held the door open for her like I always did. She walked past me like she always did. But that night, every movement, every quiet detail felt loaded. It was like being in a theater where the actors forgot their lines, and I was the only one who noticed. She didn't even look back at me as she kicked off her shoes and went straight to the kitchen. The fridge door opened. Bottled water came out. She leaned against the counter and took a long sip, her eyes fixed on the tile floor like it had answers written on it. I stood in the hallway, still wearing my jacket, still holding my keys. I couldn't stop thinking about the name on her screen, Asher, do not answer. I didn't know anyone named Asher. Neither did she. At least, not in any context she'd ever told me about. The name itself felt like a stranger breaking into our lives through a screen. And the phrase. Still thinking about last Thursday. Thursday. What happened Thursday? That was the night she said she was working late. That she had a meeting with a vendor. That she'd come home tired and said she didn't feel like talking. I even offered to rub her feet. She declined. That night, I watched Netflix alone with our dog curled at my feet, thinking how lucky I was to be with someone like her. I remember scrolling through Amazon and thinking about ordering her a little surprise, a silk robe she mentioned once in passing. I didn't buy it. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wanted to wait for a reason. A moment. Something special. Now I know. She was already making her own moments. Just not with me. She came out of the kitchen that night and smiled. Not a real smile, not the kind that reaches the eyes. Just a polite, surface-level curve of the lips. You good? She asked. As if nothing had happened. As if the message from a man she wasn't supposed to be messaging didn't just throw a grenade into the middle of our shared life. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. She brushed past me again on her way to the bedroom. Her shoulder touched mine for a fraction of a second, skin against fabric, and it felt like a static shock. I didn't move. I just stood there, my hands still on my keys, my mind screaming into a void. Should I confront her? Should I ask who he is? Should I demand to see her phone? No, that wasn't me. I've never been the explosive one. I've never been the kind of man who yells or grabs or accuses without evidence. I believed in giving space. I believed in talking when emotions settled. I believed in her. But what do you do when belief starts to look a lot like denial? When I finally moved, it was just to put my keys on the hook. I walked into the living room and sat on the couch. I could hear her in the bathroom brushing her teeth, humming to herself like she had nothing in the world to hide. That hum cut deeper than anything. It was so casual, so offhand, like she had already moved past the message, because maybe it wasn't the only one. I stared at my reflection in the black screen of the TV. I looked tired, older, sad. There's something gutting about seeing yourself in that state and realizing it's not the first time, just the first time you're admitting it. I remembered the last time she held my face in her hands. It was a month ago. We were lying in bed, and I told her I felt distant lately, that I missed how things used to be. She kissed me then. Slow, soft. Said, "We're just in a phase. I still love you." That night I fell asleep with her hand resting on my chest. Now, I wonder, was she just buying time? Smoothing over the cracks so I wouldn't notice how far apart the walls had already drifted? I barely slept that night. I laid in the dark beside her, listening to her breathing, wondering what else she was keeping quiet, wondering if that name, Asher, had ever been spoken in this house when I wasn't home, wondering what happened last Thursday, what details were erased from her calendar, what memories were made that I'd never be allowed to know. In the morning, she kissed me on the forehead. Just a light peck, like routine. "Don't forget your dry cleaning," she said. And just like that, she left, off to yoga, or brunch, or maybe to reply to that very message with more words she'd never send to me. I sat at the table with cold coffee and a headache that had nothing to do with sleep. I didn't need a dramatic confession. I didn't need some soap opera scene. All I needed was the truth. And I was going to find it, one breadcrumb at a time. Even if it broke me. I didn't confront her that weekend. I wish I could say it was because I had a plan, some carefully thought-out strategy. But the truth? I was scared. Not of her, but of what her truth would do to me. There's a kind of cowardice that comes from loving someone so much, you'd rather bleed in silence than face the possibility that they stopped loving you back. That was me. A man too polite to dig. Too afraid to look like the jealous husband. So I let the lie breathe, hoping it would suffocate on its own. It didn't. Instead, I started noticing things. Subtle. Almost too small to call evidence. Like how her phone never rang around me anymore, just vibrations. And how those vibrations would send her hands moving fast, picking it up even when we were in the middle of a conversation. One time I jokingly asked, "Is that the president?" She smiled without looking at me and said, "You're ridiculous." I laughed along, but something inside me felt hollow. She wasn't laughing with me, she was dodging. Sunday morning came, and we were in the kitchen. She wore that blue tank top I liked, the one that used to mean we were going to spend the day together. I made pancakes, like I always did, while she scrolled on her iPad. I asked her about her weekend plans, and she casually said she might meet up with Melinda again. I asked if I could come. She hesitated, just a flicker, but I caught it. "It's just girl talk," she said, sipping her coffee like she didn't just crush me under a few syllables. Later that day, while she was in the shower, I sat alone in the living room. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore, it was loaded, thick with invisible weight. I picked up her phone, which she'd left charging on the kitchen counter. I wasn't looking to snoop. I wasn't. At least that's what I told myself as I stared at the black screen, feeling like a thief in my own house. Her lock screen lit up with just the date and time. No previews. No notifications. Just a clean slate, too clean. That's when I realized she'd changed her settings. She'd disabled message previews. That might not sound like much, but it was new. Dana never cared before, never worried about me seeing texts. She used to toss her phone on the bed and leave it there for hours. Now, it was either face down, locked, or on silent. And somehow, that was the loudest confession of all. I didn't unlock it. I couldn't. I didn't know the passcode anymore. That realization hit harder than anything else. When did she change it? And why didn't she tell me? I used to know it by heart. It was our anniversary date, back when that meant something. Now, it could be anything. A date tied to someone else. Maybe his birthday. Or the night of last Thursday. That phrase haunted me last Thursday. It played in my head like a skipping record. I started retracing that night. Dana had come home around 11:40 p.m., said she was exhausted from a late work meeting. I remembered the smell on her, not perfume. Cologne. Something masculine. Sharp and expensive. I noticed it at the time, but brushed it off. She said she hugged a coworker goodbye. I believed her. I always believed her. But now, I started questioning everything. Every Thursday. Every late meeting. Every time she came home smiling at nothing in particular. I wondered if Asher, whoever he was, ever sat in our car. If he ever drank wine in our kitchen when I wasn't home. If he knew our dog's name. If he had ever touched the silk robe I never ended up buying her. Because what was the point? That night I couldn't sleep again. She slept soundly beside me, her body turned away, her breathing slow and steady. I laid there counting the seconds between each inhale, like I was trying to measure the distance between us. I wanted to ask her. I wanted to say her name. Say Asher's name. I wanted to scream, tell me the truth, but I was too afraid that she'd respond with silence or worse, calm honesty. I started looking for ways to find out without her knowing. I downloaded a free reverse lookup app on my phone, thinking maybe if I saw her call history, I could get something. But again, nothing. She had wiped her recent calls clean. Just her mom, Melinda, and one number marked, work line 2. I clicked it. It was disconnected. The next day, I asked Melinda, casually, if Dana had mentioned anything about Thursday night. Her reaction was telling. She blinked too fast, smiled too wide. Oh, yeah, we did drinks with a few of the girls. It was fun. She didn't ask why I brought it up. She didn't elaborate. She just changed the subject. I thanked her and walked away with my heart in my throat. Because Melinda wasn't just lying. She was covering. And that told me more than Dana ever had. That following week, I became an expert at pretending everything was fine. At work, I smiled when coworkers asked how Dana was. I even told my boss she and I were planning a weekend getaway, which wasn't true, of course. We hadn't planned anything in months. But lies come easier when you're trying to preserve a version of your life that already stopped existing. At home, I watched her more carefully. Not in a creepy or obsessive way. Just observant. I started noticing how often she laughed at her phone. How she started replying faster to messages that weren't mine. I'd text her something sweet during the day, miss you, or how's work? And sometimes she'd take hours to reply. But if her screen lit up with something else, she'd reach for it like her fingers were magnetized. I used to be on the other end of that urgency. One evening, while she was taking a shower, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the old corkboard by the fridge. It had been there since we moved in. Pinned to it were grocery lists, appointment cards, one of her childhood photos, and a random sticky note that read, "You are enough." She wrote it for me years ago, back when I actually believed it. But that night, something else caught my eye, a business card tucked behind the appointment reminder for her dentist. I pulled it out. It was dark navy with silver letters. A high-end photography studio. The name on the card, Asher Keller. My stomach dropped. There it was. The name. The same name I'd seen on her phone. Not a fantasy. Not a ghost. Not my imagination. A real person. I flipped the card over. On the back, in her handwriting, was a note. Tuesday at 6. Don't forget to wear white. It wasn't Thursday, but it felt close enough. I put the card back where I found it. Sat there frozen, my hands trembling slightly. I wasn't ready yet. Not to confront her. Not until I knew everything. And now, I had a name. A place. A time. And maybe, just maybe, a way in. Tuesday came faster than I expected. I spent the whole day running through excuses in my head, ways I could justify showing up at that studio without looking like the world's most suspicious husband. Part of me hoped she'd cancel. Part of me hoped she'd invite me. But she didn't. At 4:20 p.m., she texted me something casual, going to grab a smoothie before yoga. Love you. I stared at it for 10 full seconds. She was lying, again, like it was nothing. I replied with a thumbs up. Nothing else. At 5:58, I parked 2 blocks away from the photography studio listed on the card. It was one of those upscale, minimalist spaces tucked between a boutique gym and a juice bar. The windows were frosted, the front logo clean and discreet. I sat in my car, gripping the wheel, debating whether this counted as crossing a line. But then I remembered. She crossed it first. I just hadn't caught up to her yet. At 6:06, I saw her. Dana, my wife, stepping out of a rideshare, wearing a white blouse I'd never seen before, flowing, crisp, and unbuttoned just enough to look intentional. Her hair was curled in a way she never did for me. She wore lipstick. She never wore lipstick for yoga. She didn't look relaxed or tired. She looked excited. Energized. That kind of energy you bring to a first date, not a photo shoot. She walked in without hesitation, holding her phone like it was a lifeline. I waited another minute before getting out of the car and walking toward the studio. I wasn't planning to storm in. I wasn't looking to start a scene. I just needed to see something. Anything. As I reached the entrance, I saw someone lock the front door behind her. A guy, tall, maybe mid-30s, clean beard, dark jeans, button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked like someone from a catalog. I recognized him from the tiny profile photo I'd seen in the preview on her phone. That had to be Asher. That had to be him. I didn't try the door. I just stood there, pretending to be on my phone. After a few minutes, the blinds shifted, just slightly, as if someone peeked. Then they lowered them all the way. They were now completely alone. I walked away, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't trust myself if I stayed. My breath was shallow. My heart was pounding in a way I hadn't felt since my father's funeral. That same sense of helplessness, like the world was happening to me, and I was just stuck inside it. I ended up at a nearby coffee shop. I didn't order anything. I just sat at a corner table and stared at the wall, replaying every moment of the past year. Every time she said, "I'm tired," or "Work's been crazy," or "I need a little space." It all started lining up in ways that felt surgical, precise. She had been building a second world in the shadows of our life, brick by careful brick, and I'd been too wrapped up in trust to see it taking shape. At 7:42 p.m., she texted me again. "Yoga ran long. Grabbing dinner with Mel. Want me to bring you anything?" That lie hit harder than the last, because now I could see the thread, how effortlessly it unraveled. The name on the card, the message on her lock screen, the change in how she dressed. The passcode I no longer knew. Her time was no longer shared with me. It was managed against me. I told her I already ate. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to tip my hand too soon. That night, while she showered, I stared at her gym bag by the door. Something inside me cracked. I opened it. Just one peek. Not to invade, just to know. Inside, wrapped in a tiny fabric pouch, was a bottle of cologne. Not hers. Not mine. Expensive. The kind you'd spray when trying to make a memory stick. It was the same scent I noticed on her that Thursday. Now I had no more room for doubt. I didn't know yet what I would do, but I knew one thing for sure. I would never unsee what I'd seen. The next morning was unbearable. She made coffee. I sat across from her, pretending to scroll through emails while she scrolled through something else, most likely not emails. She was humming again. A soft, tuneless little hum. She did that sometimes when she was content. That's what broke me most. Because it meant something inside her felt at peace, while something inside me was turning to ash. She told me she had a lunch meeting. Said it might run long. I nodded and told her to take her time. I didn't ask who the meeting was with. I didn't need to. Her lies had become so smooth, they barely tripped over themselves anymore. But what caught my attention that morning wasn't what she said. It was what she wore. She left the house in that same white blouse. The one from the photo shoot. Her hair styled the same way. A little makeup, but not too much, just enough to give her that effortless glow. But she wasn't glowing for me. Not anymore. After she left, I just sat there at the kitchen table for a while. Same chair. Same mug. Same window view I'd looked at 1,000 mornings before. But everything around me felt unfamiliar now, like I'd stepped into a version of our home that was designed for someone else. I tried to go about my day, but my mind wouldn't cooperate. I couldn't shake the mental images, her smile behind closed blinds, the way her body language had changed, how little pieces of her had been shifting, and I was only now noticing. It was like she had been slipping away 1 inch at a time, so slowly I hadn't realized she was already gone. By noon, I had made a decision. I needed more than feelings. I needed truth. I called someone I never thought I'd call. My cousin Nathan, who works in private IT security. He's one of those guys who can find anything: phone logs, metadata, deleted messages, even fake social profiles. We hadn't spoken much in the past year, but when I asked if he could help me track a number, his tone changed immediately. "Whose number?" he asked. I paused. "I don't want to say yet. I just need to know who it belongs to, and if there's anything unusual about it." He agreed. Told me to send what I had. I gave him the digits from the photography card and the brief glance I'd caught from her lock screen. He said he'd run it through a few databases and get back to me. That evening, Dana came home smiling. Said the meeting went well. She kissed me on the cheek. I think that was the moment it hit me. She had become an actress, and I was just an extra in her film. The way she carried herself now was different, more deliberate, more careful. She watched what she said, controlled her tone, chose her words with unnatural precision. She wasn't just lying to me. She was performing. We had dinner together, reheated pasta, and a small glass of wine. She asked about my day, and I told her it was slow. She didn't probe. She used to care about the details, the small things. Now she nodded politely and moved on to talking about weekend plans, maybe a hike, or brunch, or both. She made it sound like she still wanted to spend time with me. But her eyes? Her eyes were already somewhere else. Later that night, Nathan texted, "Got a hit. You're not going to like it. Call me." I went outside, sat in my car, and called him. The number's attached to a private client line, not a business. But I traced the registration to a second device. That one's under a personal name, Asher Keller. That name's flagged on a few sites. He runs a, let's call it an intimate photography brand. Very boutique, very private, very expensive. Not illegal, just not subtle. My throat tightened. You mean? He doesn't just shoot couples. He specializes in one-on-one sessions for women. Private contracts. Discreet billing. Emotional intimacy included, sometimes. You get the picture. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Then Nathan said something I'll never forget. He's been flagged twice before. Not legally, but on message boards. For getting too involved with married clients. Always starts professional. Then turns complicated. I sat there in silence, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. "Do you want me to go further?" he asked. "No," I whispered. "Not yet." Because deep down, I already knew. I just didn't want to see the final image. Not until I had the whole frame. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to her, eyes wide open, watching the rise and fall of her breath while the word complicated repeated in my mind like a warning bell. Nathan's voice echoed louder than her soft breathing. Always starts professional. Then turns complicated. That word, complicated, it wasn't just a description anymore. It was a diagnosis of my marriage. I wanted to ask her outright. I wanted to shake her awake and demand the truth. But I didn't. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was pride. Or maybe it was just this unbearable hope that I was wrong. That all of this was just my mind connecting dots that didn't belong together. But even hope starts to rot when it's starving. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I sat at the kitchen table again and opened my laptop. I typed Asher Keller Photography into a private browser. Nothing came up at first. Just a few generic listings, all polished, empty. Then I added the word, review. That's when the curtain lifted. I found a blog, anonymous, of course, written by a woman who described a surreal experience with a photographer whose approach felt more like seduction than art. She never named him, but the studio location was the same. The description of his voice. The mention of white clothing. It all lined up. She wrote that she felt drawn to him, in a way that surprised her. That what started as creative expression turned into something she never thought she'd do. He didn't push, she wrote. He waited. And I gave. I closed the browser and sat there, hands gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just unraveling. Emotionally, mentally, like the stitching of everything I thought I understood was coming undone thread by thread. I didn't know who Dana was anymore. I didn't know what part of her life I still lived in. I only knew I wasn't her favorite chapter. That day, I made a quiet plan. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to break anything or leave a dramatic note on the fridge. I was going to walk in, look her in the eye, and give her one chance to tell me the truth. But life doesn't wait for the right moment. It creates its own. That evening, I came home a little earlier than usual. Her car was already in the driveway. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the second car parked 2 houses down. A sleek black sedan. Tinted windows. No plates on the front. I wouldn't have thought much of it if the man getting out hadn't been the same guy I saw through the blinds at the studio. Asher. He was holding a laptop case in one hand, a camera bag in the other. I froze in the shadow of our porch, heart pounding so loud I swore he'd hear it. But he didn't even look around. He walked straight toward my house. Confident. Casual. Like he'd been there before. He rang the bell once. I didn't move. Then, before she could even open the door, I stepped forward. I opened it myself. And for a second, I wished I hadn't, just because of the look on his face when he saw me. Not shock. Not fear. Just recognition. Like I was a name he'd heard before. A footnote. An obstacle he'd been warned about. "Can I help you?" I asked. He blinked, then smiled slightly. "I'm here to drop something off for Dana. She home?" Before he could respond, she appeared behind me. Barefoot. Hair tied up. Wearing that same white blouse. The blouse that used to mean nothing and now meant everything. Her face froze. "Asher," she said softly. He nodded. "I'll just leave this." He started to back away, but I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Don't, I said. He stopped. Look, man. I'm not your man, I interrupted. My voice was steady. Calm. Too calm. How long has this been going on? He looked at the ground, then back at me. She didn't tell you? That single sentence shattered every doubt I had left. I didn't punch him. I didn't scream. I didn't do anything they show in movies. I just stared at him. My mouth dry. My heart cold. He placed the laptop bag on the porch step. You should ask her about the private folder, he said. I told her not to keep it. But she did. And with that, he turned and walked away. I stood there, staring at the bag like it was a live bomb. Part of me didn't want to pick it up. Didn't want to know what was inside. But I already knew, didn't I? When I walked back inside, Dana was sitting on the couch, pale and silent. Her hands were trembling. I was going to tell you, she whispered. I didn't sit down. Then do it, I said. Tell me. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Because sometimes, when the lie is too big, even the person who lived it doesn't know where to start. I didn't ask her again. She didn't speak. Not that night. Not the next morning. What do you say, really, when silence has already said everything? I didn't need the details. I already had the facts. I'd seen the name. I'd seen the lie. I'd seen the man who rang my doorbell with confidence like he belonged. And now I had the folder. I waited until she left, I think out of shame more than obligation. Then I opened the laptop. I hesitated before typing the password. It was her old one. The one she used before she started changing things. Part of me didn't expect it to work. But it did. Maybe because deep down she wanted to be caught. Inside the folder were dozens of images. Some tasteful. Some intimate. Some too intimate. But what broke me wasn't the content, it was her face. The way she smiled. The way she looked at the camera. At him. With ease. With light. With connection. I hadn't seen that look directed at me in a very long time. I sat there in our living room, the place where we'd watched movies, argued about groceries, planned vacations, and I realized something I didn't expect. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at her. Not even at him. I was exhausted. But under the exhaustion was something else, something unfamiliar and strangely energizing. Clarity. Because this wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of something I'd forgotten how to pursue. Myself. I'd been trying to hold on to something that didn't exist anymore, maybe hadn't for a while. I had been loyal to a version of us that only I believed in. And maybe that's the hardest kind of heartbreak, when you realize you were the only one still fighting. So I packed a bag. Just enough for a few weeks. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a note. I just walked away. Quietly. For once, for me. The first night alone was hard. The second was quieter. The third felt like oxygen. I didn't have answers yet. I didn't know where I'd end up, who I'd become, or what healing would actually look like. But I knew this. I was done begging for honesty. Done shrinking myself to fit into someone else's unfinished story. Done waiting to be chosen by someone who already made their choice. It's been 5 weeks now. I've found a small apartment. I wake up early. I walk more. I even started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. Not because I'm good at it, but because it's mine. It belongs to me. Dana reached out a few times, apologizing, wanting to talk. But I told her gently, I'm not angry. I'm just done. Some endings come with fire and fury. Mine came with silence, then freedom. To anyone reading this, if you're in a place where love feels like begging, where you're constantly waiting to feel seen again, I hope you remember this. You deserve truth. You deserve peace. You deserve to be someone's choice, not their secret. And if they can't give you that, walk away. Not to punish them, but to finally return to yourself. Because you are not what they left behind. You are what you choose to become after.